I'm going to talk about the good and the bad with this process, because it can go really bad, meaning it's not going to provide anything for you to paint on, or no image will be transferred. Or it could go bad in a good way, where you end up with blemishes and things in there that contribute to the piece and can help guide the aesthetics of the piece. So first of all, you have to think about what you're going to be painting on. And like I said, that could be a study, it could be a photo, it could be a film still, it could be photos that you took, it could be drawings you took and you scanned. These are studies that I did in a meeting, and so I scanned these, flipped them in Photoshop, and then transferred them to this, and now I have a surface I can paint on. This is a Durer hand print, and I transferred that. Transfer crazy. This was actually taken into Photoshop, and I took a Goya print, and I actually combined it with my sketch, and I transferred that and then painted on. Okay, these are on hard substrates. These are pieces of hardboard or wood. Okay, I use them a lot for glazing, but like I said, you could paint over the image completely. You can leave aspects of the photo, but at the end of the day, the process really is going to come down to wanting there to be a blurring between the photo image and the painted image. Okay, so I went to PV Arts and Crafts and just bought these cheap gesso boards, so they're pre-primed. Now, the one thing I'm going to say about working on any kind of board is you always want to bevel your edges. And what that means is it just means sanding down these really, really rough edges. Boards are really, really prone to break, especially boards that have been combined in layers like this through a steam process, like a hardboard or a masonite, or a form of masonite, or plywood. So remember, plywood is actually grained wood run counter to each other and combined with glue. And what's the weak part of plywood? The weakest aspect of plywood?
The edges.
Well, the edges, but it's the glue, right? So they're gluing pieces of wood together, so the glue is the weak point. So eventually, if you have plywood, your plywood's going to fall apart because the glue is going to fall apart probably quicker than the wood will. But it also, you run the risk of, if the piece kind of falls in this kind of direction, it'll split right at the ply, and that could happen to, I've had it happen to masonite before. So by beveling your edges, it just kind of breaks the fall a little bit if it hits the ground or falls, right? And this can just come in, like I've had this happen with storage of work, just moving pieces around in storage, and the corners end up getting smashed apart, and then eventually the wood just splits. And I've had it happen to really professional surfaces. You can actually even see on this a little bit of chipping that's already taking place on this, probably just from it being shipped. So what I typically do is I usually bevel my edges prior to putting any primer or anything onto the board. Okay. In this case, I bought this, so I'd have to bevel it and then prime it again if I wanted to. The reason I like these is because of the super, super clean, smooth surface is really easy for transfers. Any kind of texture will fight the transfer a little bit. So, okay, so we're going to go over the handout, and then we're just going to take it as a step-by-step process. We have a few tools here. We have a spray bottle. This will come in handy once we remove the transfer, once it's dry. Okay, so we're going to need to apply water to it, and we're going to have to rub it with a sponge, okay, or some kind of surface like this to get all of the paper off of the transfer. Be very careful, because you might not realize it, but a lot of sponges come made with soap embedded in them, so that you don't have to go through the very laborious process of putting soap into your sponge. So what you'll find is you'll start to scrub it to get that paper off, and bubbles will start to come up, and it'll be a bloody mess. So make sure that it's a sponge. Okay, it could be synthetic, it could be natural, but just no soap. Okay. Yeah, you could use a washcloth or something, you know, something that can withstand the water and not fall apart. So if you're using something real fibrous, like tissue paper or something like that, it's just going to cause more of a mess than anything. We have our matte gel for our transfer. Today I'm using clear leveling gel, and the reason I use this is because, first of all, you want it to be clear. The glossy, non-glossy is up to you. I want it to level well, and I don't want to fight through all of the texture of a very bodied gel, but they all kind of work. So this process is really taking a photo image and actually sucking the ink into the matte gel and then sticking it or gluing it to a surface. So in a sense, you're creating a decal onto your surface, and then you're removing the paper that the ink was on. And then when you remove that, you're just left with the decal. So remember, this is in a sense a printmaking process. So if I take Chewbacca and I put them down like that, and then I transfer Chewbacca, I'm going to flip my image. So if I don't want to flip my image, you're a painter and you just want to deal with the image that you chose, then you got to take it into Photoshop and flip it, because the flipping is going to flip the image. So that's really, really important. Do not forget to do that, because then you're going to look at your image and go, oh crap, it's backwards. And then you're going to have to reformat everything. Okay. I'm not going to worry about that because it's a demo, but if I was serious about this piece, I'd want to flip it in Photoshop. Okay. Now, like I said, we're not going to talk about layering in Photoshop just yet. We're going to wait till the next project to do that. But you can get into the layering process, and you can actually create all kinds of collage aspect things with sketches, paintings, drawings, photos, and come up with like a collaged image to actually paint on. And you could take that Photoshop doc, combine the layers together, and then print it, and then or flip it, and then transfer it. Okay. Like I said, you want this to work to some degree. As for it working and being a super, super clean print is not that important, because it's going to be painted on, right? So if you were in printmaking, this would be serious business, that this image would be perfect, But for this, it might lead to kind of some aesthetic paths that you can get into due to the breakdown of the image, okay? And what I'm doing today is, like I said, you want to do a Xerox copy or a laser jet. Today I'm going to do an inkjet, because I want to see how well it transfers. The one thing I can say about an inkjet printer from doing it multiple times is it does kind of work. One of the problems that seems to happen is the color gets all screwy. So you're kind of better off working with black and white if you do go inkjet. Make sure that if you go to a printing service that you ask for a laser jet, but 9 out of 10 times they're going to give you an inkjet and tell you it's laser jet. So I don't know how to get around that problem, other than just keep reinforcing it to the kid that's working there. It's a laser jet, right? That's a laser jet, right? Caitlin, that's a laser jet, right? It's a laser jet. Laser jet?
The person tells you it is.
Laser jet? No inkjet, laser jet. But you're going to get an inkjet, so, because they don't care. Okay. So we're going to go over this list and talk about it step by step. So the print image, scanned sketch, drawing, or photo image on a laser jet printer or a Xerox. Ink, like I said, will work, but it can be problematic, but that might lead to some greater things in the end. Your transfer must place a board under the canvas, so you must have a hard substrate. So if you're probably going to want to avoid stretched canvas, because of the bounce of the canvas. It's hard for that to kind of stick together to actually transfer properly. I've had students pull it off, because a student will always say, oh, I could pull it off, and then 9 out of 10 times they can't, but then someone does. So I don't know the magic and the numbers and stats on that, but I would say if you're going to do canvas, try to do it on a piece of canvas with a hard substrate underneath it, and then stretch it if you decide to do it that way.
I'm assuming your max size is going to be like 8.5 by 11.
Okay, so for the image itself, if you're limiting yourself to a printer, it's 8.5 by 11. The way students have gone around this was they tiled it, printed it large format, just printed it tiled in Photoshop. They've gone to a printer service to have a big print. Like I said, the last first place in the student show was huge, and he actually went to a print shop and had them print it out. Now, if you print it out in black and white on just cheap paper, it's not going to cost you that much. It's when you're getting into the really fancy paper and high color and all that kind of stuff. So I've had students do tiled pieces where they worked on just multiple small pieces and then either did a series or combined them into a bigger piece. But if you are just trying to print an image like this, I didn't think much about this. I was like, I want to do something Star Wars. Watched Empire Strikes Back over the weekend, and I'm all excited, and I want to do Chewbacca, and so I just went and I found an image and printed it. I didn't even scale it, just printed this size. So you're going to want to be a lot more thoughtful than I am, because it's going to be your piece. This is a demo. Even like if I saw this and I saw those lines in there, I would probably change my ink, or I would take it somewhere to have it printed properly. Okay, paper. Paper is really, really problematic in this process, so we're going to get this guy out. Even though paper can withstand water, and certain rag papers are made to withstand water, the process of getting that transfer off of paper is going to require you to be rubbing a lot of water over the paper and rubbing it. So any kind of fibrous material, such as any kind of paper, is going to just get ripped apart in this process. So if you decide you want to use paper, I would put a few coats of clear matte gel or gesso down on the paper first, but then it kind of gets into like, why would you use paper then? But the removal process will destroy the paper. So if I printed on this side of this, it would work, but the darkness would probably hide the image. Now you could do things such as tone this a light color and then transfer it. That would work. But I wouldn't go too dark if you decide to do that, because we want to be able to see the image. So you can see here, all the dark on here is actually just the black ink, and the white is just the white gessoed surface. Okay, we'll get into the process in a minute. We're going to use a print brayer, just like we did with the paper, to kind of transfer the image. We're going to use a gesso brush. Doesn't really matter. You just don't want the hair getting into the piece to apply the gesso. Just like applying the paper, we're going to apply both sides. So we're going to put it on the paper because it's going to absorb into the paper, and then we're also going to put it on the gessoed surface. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put one more layer of matte gel on top of it. And I didn't do that initially, but some people are saying it's easier to kind of peel the paper off that way, so it almost acts like a sticker. And we're going to wait a day. So remember, acrylic dispersion doesn't dry as fast as you think it does, so do give it a day. I've gotten impatient before, and I've tried pulling it off prematurely, like within hours, and everything just ripped off at once. So it really does need to set for a good day. And then the removal of the paper on the second day, you really, really got to work at it, because it seems like all the paper's off, and then you kind of start working on it, and you realize these little pieces are left, and they get into the painting. It's not that big of a deal because you're going to paint over it. But if you don't want to have to fight those little pieces of pulp, then make sure that you properly remove everything off of it. So the next class, we're going to kind of spend the beginning cleaning it off. Remember, reverse your transfers, or reverse your image for your transfer. Make sure your substrate's a light value. LaserJet or Xerox is best. Printmaking brayers, rigid surface. Make sure your matte gel dries for a day. Okay? You have this, you have a copy of it, so we're just going to start the process. Okay, again, if I had my way, I would bevel my edges, and then I would put my gesso onto the surface. Make sure it's hard, make sure it's light. It could be slightly colored, but remember that could take away from everything and then you're stuck with color, but that's up to you. Okay. Same idea here. We're going to coat our image and then we're going to transfer it, and then we're basically, emergency. And then we're going to put more matte gel on the other side, and then, after we bring it out and leave it. Okay. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to find my imagery that I want on here. And I don't know, there's part of this that's kind of just all dark. I want to go for the head. I want some Chewbacca in there. So I'm going to kind of move this around. And again, just like my last one, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm just going to mark where I want my edges. Do be very thoughtful about the image that you print and its relationship to the substrate. It's so important because if you think about, I'm just going to trace this really quick to show you, but because I wasn't thoughtful enough about this, I have 2 white bars on the other side here, so maybe I want that, maybe I don't, but if I don't want it, then it doesn't work, Think about the placement. Like I said, if you actually draw with the pencil on here and you take this off, you actually have a window telling you where your choice is of what you're taking. The other thing is the pencil's important and graphite's important because if I can't see it and I have a dark image here and I show it in the light, graphite will always show, so you can see it that way. And then of course you can put your thing back if you have to. Now, I'm going to cut this down a little bit just to make it more manageable, but again, just like the paper transfer, I'm going to leave a little bit of edges over because it just makes it a little bit more workable. Nothing sharp in this class. Good reasons. Painters they get angry. Very jealous. Okay. Now I have some craft paper down, and I think it's a really good idea that you do that because if it goes through and it gets stuck to the table, basically you just glued your piece to the table. So it's better to glue it to craft paper and then to glue it onto a table or something, or a marble countertop. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tape this down just to hold my image down. And like I said, there's a lot of relationships to this process, like you would do the paper transfer. Printmaking also does a process like this called a xylene transfer, but it's very, very toxic. Cheaper, but toxic. Xylene. It's just a very pungent soup of terp or something, I don't know. Now, you're going to videotape this, so thank you. But like I said, if you go to YouTube and you go to Golden's page, there are a ton of these transfer examples on Golden's page. Even the gels that they prefer, because they actually have transfer gels you can buy just for this process. I just want something not terribly thick, workable, something that'll level in a decent way, something that's not terribly glossy, somewhat matte. Okay. And you don't need a ton, but okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my gesso on both sides. So I'm going to put it here, just like the paper, put it on my print, and then I'm going to flip this, flip it again, bray it out, and then I'm going to put the matte gel over top of the paper again. And that way it's going to kind of just gel the hell out of it, so that when I take it off, it just, hopefully it peels off better. Never seems to, but we'll see. Okay. Make sure that all kinds of like dust and particle matter is not in and around the processor, you're just going to suck it right into the gel and it'll get between the transfers. That blue color.
So do you want us to go thin with this, or like kind of patchy like you're doing?
I go kind of wacky, crazy, thick. And I only do that because I've had so many situations where it just didn't work because it was not enough. And you always have to remember the gesso's absorbent and the paper's absorbent, so you have that liquid or that water that's in that gel is going to be kind of pulled into both directions. Now this is where you have to be a little bit careful, because this is where you can end up gluing your piece to something. So I'm just going to kind of move my gel and flip this into a place where there's not a lot of matte gel on it. Okay.
Where's a good place to go? Oh, sorry. To go get our stuff for the.
There's a place in the middle of campus next to Chick-fil-A.
Oh, the UPS store?
Yeah, they do it.
Oh.
There's also a place on the corner of Beach and Hodges, right where the Target plaza is. There's a Copy Max or something, or Office Max right there.
Excellent.
So much fun. And then remember, we bray. I'm gonna move this over. We're gonna bray from the middle out. Like I said, I always like to bevel my edges just a little bit and pull the paper over the substrate. And the reason is because I find that sometimes the corners will actually start to kind of pull up if the paper isn't attached there. Now what I'm going to do is just really quick, I'm going to take a paper towel without a lot of fiber in it, and I'm just going to kind of clean up the edges here a little bit. That way it flip it again.
So if you're tiling a bigger piece, how would you do that? Because if you like a big board, you can't really like, flip it. Like you have to set out all your like tile, like all your like slices of photo on the board, like at once.
Well, what you would have to do is you just use a bigger brush, and you would have to cover them.
Yeah.
You know, and what I would do in that situation is I would have make sure you're in a secure place where, you know, things aren't going to fly everywhere. Have your photos down, and then put your board down onto the photos, okay? And then sandwich it, peanut butter and jelly, you know, squish it, and then flip it, and then kind of bray it out. And then like the last stage, which is to just put one more coat over top of everything. The only thing that this really does, in my opinion, is it secures that matte gel is going to really go through there and pull that ink off of the surface, and it's also going to, in a sense, sandwich the paper so that when you go to pull it off, it's kind of caught between two pieces of matte gel and it comes off easier. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The brush also kind of knocks it down quite a bit. Now, like I said, I did use an inkjet, so we'll have to pray about it and hope it turns out good. Okay. Safe. Okay. Just make sure that bottom's dry, or you're going to glue it to whatever you're putting it on. And then the next class, what we're going to do is we're going to use the sponge, and we're going to use the water and the spray bottle, and we're going to try to get all of this paper off, and you'll see it'll transfer as a decal on here. Just again, remember, flip your image in Photoshop if you don't want it flipped. I say that again and again because if you're thinking about a composition or aesthetics in some way, that could really, really throw you for a loop.
When we take our image to whatever shop we're getting it printed on, do we just take it as a SD card or USB and they put it?
Yeah, what I usually do is I'll take it It depends on where I'm taking it. So like, I have a graphic designer I work with, and so I know that when I go with him, I could actually work with him on exactly what I want. But if you're going to any kind of store that's, you know, a Copy Max or Office Max, most of the people are not specialists in printing. I don't know if they're specialists in anything, for that matter. And so you go there, and you know, there are times when you want to get back there and just show them how to, you know, just hit the print button. So you want to make sure that that file is exactly what you want. All you want them to have to do is hit print. And make sure it goes to the right printer, and that's it. You know, you don't want to leave any, you know, problem solving to that person to do. Just like I said, I mean, they're just general workers there. It's kind of like going to Michael's and asking them about the quality of their oil paint, you know, and then you get someone that's like, I don't even know what oil paint is, you know, I just put it on the shelf. So just make sure that it's on the drive and it's saved to the size, that you look at it in Photoshop under print size, you know, any kind of file to see the actual size of the image as it would come out of the printer. Make sure that all the colors are saved the way you want it. I would even convert it to CMYK for the printing process instead of RGB for a better print as well. So take care of all that stuff prior to that. Now for painting, it might not be as important to you because the image typically for this painting is a start. You're painting through an image more than the end all being the transferred image.
Make sure it's a JPEG.
And,
that over that.
Sorry. All right, so when you purchase those are pre-primed, you paint gesso over it before?
I would prime your own.
Okay. And did those come larger sizes, that PB arts?
Yeah, but they're so expensive.
Oh,
I mean, if you're willing to like, I get these on such a discount, but like that's $12 for this board. I mean, you really want to pay $12 for a little board,
good point. I mean, I have a piece
or
of
is it
plywood.
gesso $12? I don't know which one's $12.
I have a large piece of plywood like this big, and I have like 3 layers of clear gesso.
Just remember, if you're
Right
using
over.
plywood, make sure it's not warped. Make sure you gesso both sides. Bevel your edges. Clean your edges. You know, plywoods could be high quality. Plywood could be junk. You know.
I mean, it's junk plywood.
Well,
Why
that
would
don't
you
be
gesso
junk.
both sides?
Just to straighten it out.
So it wouldn't warp?
Yeah, so if you gesso it, the water tends to pull it that way.
Yeah.
And then if the back, it pulls it that way, it just evens it out.
So what's a surface that's similar to that, that's cheaper?
To masonite?
Whatever that is, yeah.
Yeah, that's as cheap as you get.
Oh, wow.
Well, these were only $4 or $5.
But you're gonna wanna, if you want masonite, go to Home Depot.
So what?
Go to Home
The
Depot.
masonite?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Yes. Okay.
And what's the CMYK?
Cyan, yeah, magenta.
Red, yellow, blue, and black.
It's the ink, the printer format, you know. So you don't, RGB is a light format for the monitor. CMYK is an ink format for printing. So if you print RGB, it's not printing for its correct format. It's printing for the screen.
I see.
So the RGB would be based off of the CMYK would be based off of the cyan, magenta, yellow, black. Key is black. K is key.
Thank you.
And we'll talk about that later when we get into layering as well. Cool. So I'm going to take this off. Now remember, I put that coat of matte gel on here so that I could easily take a lot of the paper off with it. Also remember I used an inkjet instead of a laser jet, so this might be a disaster, but we're going to try. So I'm carefully going to...
We're supposed to use laser jet?
Yeah. If you notice, you start to see there's a change in color in the inks, and I don't know why, but there's something about the inkjet inks that interact with the matte gel and turns the color a different color, but it still works. So in a sense, this has kind of been a piece of paper that's been turned into a piece of matte gel. So you can see the beginning of the image. So what I need to do is I need to get a sponge and I need to get all this crap off, and we're gonna do this with water. So we're just gonna go over to the sink and we're gonna run it under the water. If you have something that's an open wood surface that you don't want water getting into, then make sure that you coat your stuff with matte shell too to protect it. You don't need a ton, you know, you don't wanna be like throwing it in a bath of water. We just wanna get water on it and then start kind of pulling it off.
There's a clear gesso, is that fine? If there's like clear gesso on the other side, that's fine too.
So we're gonna go to the sink. I know, it's a long walk. Very, very long, very hard. So here I am, and I'm in a sense just rubbing the someone's getting a beating.
I can't sometimes, I forget what I'm bringing out.
That's pretty good. It worked good.
They each has like a normal color, like any.
Put this like
It's not clear, I was just saying that it actually transfers. Yeah.
How much of that water will actually damage I guess you didn't
So I
have.
said paint the wood.
Yeah, you didn't gesso the back,
I mean, the
did
paper
you?
on top of it.
No. It just dissolves away.
Yeah, you just want it to be wiped off anyways.
Well, I'm talking about-
If you do the paper
Yeah,
on
if you
the
do the
way
paper
and do
surface.
the.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
What I'm gonna do, so here's the transfer.
Looks good.
Now do you see that area there? That ink is not holding on. Now, that's the problem. I mean, to me, that's the big issue with the inkjet versus the laser jet. It works, and I'm gonna have to let this dry, and I'm gonna have to put it through another process of the water again.